Over less than 4 months, a vicious psychopath took the lives of 5 men in London, England. Colin Ireland made the conscious decision to become a serial killer and started his spree while in his late 30s after a twisted New Year's resolution. Starting in March of 1993, Ireland began hunting down men at the gay bars of the bustling city, picking them up, then snuffing out their lives using ropes and his bare hands. When his heinous crimes did not receive the attention he desired, the creature called authorities to report his first victim, and later he would call to taunt police about his vicious acts, saying that he had left clues to his identity at the crime scenes. He said his goal was to be a serial killer, and he had read the manual and knew the minimum number of victims, referring to the works of famed FBI profiler Robert Ressler. It was not until Ireland got sloppy and left behind fingerprints at the second-to-last scene on June 7, 1993, that police were finally able to solve the case using CCTV footage to help identify him. Colin Ireland was born on March 16, 1954 in Dartford, England. His mother was only 17 at the time and refused to name his father when hospital staff was filling out young Colin's birth certificate. He had left and the boy would never know who he was. Money was tight as his mother did not make much at her job as an assistant in a newsstand, so for the first 5 years of Colin's life, they lived in Dartford with her parents and brother. In 1959, they moved out into Gravesend, the first in 9 moves over the next several years. At one point, they would even live in a community of bare-bones accommodations for homeless women and their children. In 1961, Colin's mother remarried, and for a while the boy even used his stepfather's last name, Saker. Things seemed to have been decent for the family for a short while despite the financial hardships that they faced. They all lived together in Dartford for 3 years until they were evicted for not paying their rent. At that point, Colin and his mother returned to the homeless women's community, while Saker returned to his own parents' home due to no men being allowed in the homeless shelter. The repeated moving would not be the worst thing to happen to young Colin during his formative years. When he was 10, shortly after returning to the shelter, Colin's mother found that she was once again pregnant. The only way she could have hoped to afford this new baby was to put Colin in government care. He had already been having trouble in school because of the often moves interrupting his studies, but being given up must have compounded his feelings of insecurity. After a few months, Colin's stepfather returned and with his mother retrieved the boy from foster care, but he would soon abandon the family once again. It was not until 1966 that his mother found a stable relationship, but in this case she did not adopt her new husband's last name. Despite his home life finally being stable, Colin would report other disturbing events when he later recalled his childhood. On at least 4 different occasions starting in his pre-teens, he had been approached and either looked at inappropriately or propositioned by adult men. Though none of these predators was successful in physical contact, the experiences filled Colin with a feeling of rage and hate, which he seems to have pointed unfairly at the whole gay community. In 1970, Colin stole some money to run away to London, and when he was caught, he was sent to a special school for emotionally disturbed boys. He would soon be kicked out after he set another student's personal belongings on fire. Fleeing once again to London, Ireland was soon arrested for robbery. This time, it was off to a low-security juvenile detention center, called a borstal. After an escape, he was sent to a higher security facility where he would remain until he turned 18. Colin would add to his criminal record over the next years, racking up arrests for burglary and intimidation. In 1980, he escalated things when he was arrested once again for robbery. A year later, he would marry a woman almost 10 years his senior, but the couple divorced in 1987 after she caught him having an affair. In 1989, Ireland would meet his second wife, Janet Young, who was the landlord of a pub called the Globe in Devon. He moved in with her a week after they met, and the couple got married only 3 months later. But this marriage soon fell apart after Colin stole money out of his wife's account. By 1991, Colin was working in a homeless shelter, despite being homeless himself, and he found some sense of purpose in the position. But rumors started about him, and he resigned later in 1992. This was when a rage-filled and frustrated Ireland made his New Year's resolution to make a name for himself by becoming an infamous serial killer. He had been reading books on the subject by Robert Ressler, who pioneered criminal profiling. Ireland knew that geographic profiling pointed to such crimes being committed less than 10 miles from where the culprit lived, and for this reason he decided to go to London to begin his reign of terror. Ireland began visiting the Coleherne pub, which was a well-known gay bar. The patrons had a system of using colored handkerchiefs to identify what they were into, and Colin began posing as a man who liked to tie his partners up. He met his first victim on March 8th. Peter Walker was a 45-year-old choreographer, and the two left together that night. Once they were in Walker's apartment, Ireland talked the man into being tied up. And then when Walker was defenseless, Colin beat him savagely and pulled a plastic bag over his head. The creature had brought a kit with him that included a knife and a change of clothes, which he switched into. Once his evil act was done, Ireland was in no rush to leave the apartment. He burned his victim's hair and cleaned up a bit. As he did so, he found paperwork identifying Walker as being HIV positive. This angered him, and he shoved a condom down the throat of the deceased. He also left 2 teddy bears in a suggestive pose next to the body. The next morning, Ireland left, blending in with the commuters. He flung the clothes and gloves that he had been wearing during the crime out the train window on his way home to Southend-on-Sea, 40 miles from London. When he did not see reports of his crime, Colin called the newspaper. He initially just stated that he was concerned about some dogs in an apartment, but when he was met with disinterest, he said that he had taken the life of the dog's owner and they were stuck alone in the apartment. When police discovered the body, there was little for them to go on. Multiple factors hindered the investigation, such as distrust from the gay community and the fact that S&M activities between consenting adults had been made illegal, making the community extremely reluctant to have any interaction with law enforcement. 2 months after the first victim, Colin was ready to strike once more. On the 28th of May, he returned to the Coleherne and picked up a 37-year-old librarian named Christopher Dunn. Once again, he used the rows of rope games to render Dunn defenseless. Once Dunn was tied up, Ireland beat him and burned him in his genital region with a lighter, torturing him into giving up his PIN number so that the creature could steal some money as he was unemployed and without a means of income. Once he had what he wanted, Colin stuffed cloth down Dunn's throat, suffocating him. On the way home, Ireland made a stop at the bank to withdraw £200 from Dunn's account, using the stolen bank card. When the body was discovered, police assumed that it was an adult activity gone wrong and did not immediately connect it to the Walker case. This time, Ireland had ignited a hunger in himself, and less than a week later he was once again on the prowl. On June 4, 1993, he picked up 35-year-old Perry Bradley, the son of a U.S. congressman. Bradley was reluctant to let Ireland tie him up, but the creature was able to convince him that this was the only way Colin could enjoy himself, and allowed a noose to be put around his neck. He then forced Bradley to give up his PIN number and bank card. After the ordeal, Bradley fell asleep, and Ireland pulled the rope tight, cutting off his air passage. Ireland was able to find £100 in the apartment and withdrew another $200 on his way home. When this crime once again received no media attention, Ireland began to get frustrated. He returned to the Coleherne on June 7, 1993, and picked up a 33-year-old housing warden named Andrew Collier. Ireland followed his usual routine, but this time Collier refused to give up his PIN number. Ireland would even strangle the man's poor cat in an effort to force him to give up the code. Once again, in his search of the apartment, Ireland found paperwork identifying Collier as HIV positive. This filled Colin with rage, and he burned the body and arranged it and the cat in a disgusting and suggestive pose. In this case, the creature's cleanup efforts fell short, and he missed some fingerprints left behind on a window frame. Finally, police were beginning to connect the horrific crimes occurring around London. These suspicions were confirmed when Ireland called authorities on June 12, telling them that he had taken 4 lives, taunting them, and telling them that they needed to stop him. Colin took his final victim the same day that he called police. He met 41-year-old chef Emmanuel Spiteri and followed the same procedure as he had with his previous victims. Once he was done, he tried to set the apartment on fire before blending into the morning commuters the next day. However, the fire would burn out in the same room that he had lit it in, leaving the rest of the apartment untouched. Colin Ireland would once again call police, this time to direct authorities to Spiteri's apartment and to inform them that he had surpassed the minimum number of victims to be classified as a serial killer. Due to this, he said that he could stop taking lives as he had achieved his twisted goal. Even after the call, it was 2 days before police would discover Spiteri's body. Over the next few days, police appealed to the public for any information related to the case, and in early July, they published CCTV footage of the man who had been with Spiteri the night he lost his life. This seems to have spooked Ireland, and he met with a lawyer on July 19th, telling them that he had been with Spiteri and that he had left him with a third man at the apartment. but he did not realize the police had his fingerprints from the Collier scene, and he was soon charged in the Collier and Spiteri homicides. Before his trial could be completed, Colin confessed to all 5 homicides on August 19, 1993. He tried to mitigate his crimes by saying that he had been under the influence in each case, and that he had not targeted gay men due to homophobia, but because he saw them as easy targets. Colin Ireland would be sentenced to a full life tariff, which is rare in the UK. He would remain behind bars in the Wakefield prison until February 21, 2012, when he was found unresponsive in his cell. He would be pronounced dead, with the cause being listed as pulmonary fibrosis and complications from a broken hip he had sustained in the exercise yard. I think I speak for all of us when I say good riddance.